I'm just kidding. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Only Football Podcast. As usual, my name is Kyle. Nothing warms my heart more than throwing the 30-second countdown on and seeing that there are already people coming in. Love to see the live views. Well, look, the title of today's episode is Anthony Richardson named the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. Some people might have thought it was premature. We're going to break all of that down today. So, when it comes to naming a starting quarterback, we've seen a couple different. Sorry, let me adjust my music. I'm popping a little bit. There we go. When we see people get named starting quarterback, it happens one or two ways, right? A head coach comes in and he's like kind of got a hard style. He gives compliments very frequently, Bill Belichick-esque, and they hold off on naming a starting quarterback, even though the whole world knows who it's going to be. And I'll give you an example. Bryce Young has not been named the starting, or is it Bryce Young or CJ Stroud? The number one or the number two pick haven't been named the starting quarterback. I believe the Texans open up against the Ravens on the road. I'm going to verify that right now. But to keep it in-house, what we're really talking about is two different techniques of head coaching that basically, do quarterbacks actually benefit from getting the reins and getting a vote of confidence, getting an early nod by a head coach? Or is it better off to not put them under enormous pressure right away? And it's an important question because ultimately, if you throw a young quarterback into the fire and he has a terrible season, let's take Peyton Manning, right, who leads the NFL still to this day in interceptions thrown by a rookie quarterback. That guy's got a statue outside Lucas Oil Stadium. So when we're talking about does it work, does it not work, let's try to remove Peyton Manning, right, and Tom Brady, and right, like if you draft a quarterback in the 6th round, that doesn't mean because Tom Brady won 7 Super Bowls that this guy's got a chance. So move the anomalies out of the way and let's just think about it for a second. I think it depends on a situation based, situation to situations. For Anthony Richardson, he was out of the 3 quarterbacks, right? Because if all 3 quarterbacks that we believe are going to start week 1, then there will be 3 rookie quarterbacks starting this season. I believe last year there wasn't a single NFL rookie quarterback starting week 1. And Rich Eisen actually had a really good point on this where he talked about not just the 3 rookie quarterbacks that are making a start, but Derek Carr making a start for a new team. Jimmy Garoppolo making his first week 1 start since I don't know when. Baker Mayfield taking a week 1 start, maybe his career on the line. Russell Wilson making a career start, a guy that had a Hall of Fame trajectory come to a complete halt last season. Jordan Love, although he's not a rookie, he's making his first week 1 starting quarterback appearance. So there's a lot of question marks on quarterbacks around the league right now. The difference is that week 1 hasn't begun yet. Pat McAfee did something really cool. Not really cool, but it made a really cool point where he went around the room, right? And he said, Steelers fan, what are you guys thinking? And they're like, oh, we're going to the Super Bowl. And then he went, Packers fan, what do you guys think? We're winning the North, And the point is that everybody in the preseason is optimistic. Everybody believes the best for their team. But we know by week 6, there will be people that are accepting hard truths, whether it's Desmond Ritter's not really our guy, or Baker Mayfield didn't have more football left in him, or Derek Carr, although he got jacked this offseason, that wasn't the answer that the Saints needed. They needed, maybe old Derek Carr, whatever. Jimmy Garoppolo is too injury prone, and we knew it. I mean, there's going to be some kind of turbulence for different ball clubs at some point, and they're going to have to make quarterback decisions. But right now, going into week 2 in the preseason, everybody's feeling good at quarterback. Everybody's feeling like if they don't have their long-term starter at quarterback, they have a guy that could become the long-term starter. That's called optimism. And there's a lot of it in the offseason. And it took me probably 25 years of being a fan before I learned how to manage my optimism and be realistic about my team. And don't get it twisted, I'm still way too optimistic year in and year out. And that is called being a passionate, diehard, bleed orange and blue, navy blue Broncos fan. And Anthony Richardson, we see a lot of highlights going into week 1, right? I mean, when preseason week 1 starts, the first thing that we look to do is, at least me, I actually have not asked this question in a general sense to the public, but I know for me, I'm looking at Carolina's preseason highlights. And I might not even type Carolina. I might put Bryce Young week 1 highlights, CJ Stroud, Texans, Patriots week 2 highlights. I want to know how the rookie quarterbacks perform, how they went out. I'll never forget when Kyler Murray was drafted by the Cardinals, just 1 year after Josh Rosen was drafted by the Cardinals. And they had that controversy. And I remember Kyler Murray's first game, he took a snap and he threw. It was like some kind of wide receiver screen, just a quick snap and pass, a timing play. And it looked natural and it looked good and it looked smooth. And I was like, I think that guy, he looks like he belongs here. And it was just a simple play. But is it really just a simple play? When you watch your quarterback that is maybe not a rookie, but maybe he's like Jordan Love coming in last off. Sorry, there's some dog noise going. I don't know if you guys can hear that in the feedback, but Jordan Love coming in, there's just this evaluation that is being done globally, especially if it's on prime time, like Jordan Love appearance was week 7. And it doesn't take much to just know. And it's hard to even put it in words. But I feel that when a quarterback goes in, there is a feeling. CJ Stroud is a great example. People say, don't get too high, don't get too low in the preseason. Try to stay steady. Don't read into things too much. But it's hard not to if something doesn't pass the eyeball test, right? Russell Wilson, mostly the offensive line, did not pass the eyeball test, okay? Jordan Love coming in at Sunday Night Football, he passed the eyeball test. And that's why they moved off of Rodgers. I've said it like this before, and I'm stealing this from Colin Cowherd. He made the most, I don't know if he wrote it himself or his producers, but he said, if you're watching a great movie, it doesn't take long for you to know that you're watching a great movie. The producing, the video, the cuts, the different scenes, the dialogue, the banter, all of that, you can know pretty quick, hey man, I think I'm watching a really good movie. And it's like, you click on it again and it says Golden Globe or Oscar winning, whatever the case may be. But the point is when you're watching a great movie, you know in the first 10 to 15 minutes that you're watching a good movie, maybe even great. When a quarterback goes in, a rookie quarterback, and you are watching him take his first snaps, going on his first drive, you can know in his first 6 snaps, right? There's only 3 possible outcomes. Yes, he belongs. I don't know yet. No. A lot of people die in the I don't know yet because it gets to a point where you you say I don't know yet. We don't really know what his ceiling is. Kirk Cousins is a great example. You'll go with somebody for a very long time because chances are you don't have a better option. If the Vikings were to get rid of Kirk Cousins, who would they have replaced him with that was better? No, not Derek Carr. Nobody. Nobody in the draft is going to be better than Kirk Cousins. But at the end of the day, can Kirk Cousins win a Super Bowl? Maybe. We don't know yet. That's the I don't know space. And you can live there for a long time as a quarterback. But we saw it with, I would say, Kenny Pickett, Mac Jones. Like do we know that Mac Jones is the long-term starter? Do we feel like he's going to be a Patriot for the next 15 years? No. But until we figure it out, we're going to ride with him because he's the best option. And that's pretty much what happened with Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. It was like, we don't want to pay him that much money. And they're like, okay, well, what are you going to do? Tank? Not win any games this season? And it was like, well, I guess we have to pay him and hope that, he stays healthy and whatever. So when you have that moment, though, where I'm Patrick Mahomes, his moment was on a 3rd down against the Broncos, week 17. I believe the Chiefs clinched the playoffs already and Alex Smith was resting. And they threw Patrick Mahomes out there. I think it was snowing. The Broncos weren't playing for anything. And he threw an interception early. I think it was the second quarter, threw an interception. He shook it off. He came back. He made a 3rd down play where he was scrambling. The pocket collapsed. He ran to his left. A couple people were trying to pull him down, and he threw probably a 25-yard dime at the 1st down marker. And it was at that play that we all knew, oh, there's something there. There's something there. Justin Herbert, we knew right away, right? He came into the game. He made a couple throws that we were like, oh, yep, that guy's going to be around for a long time. I believe that Justin Herbert may be a modern day Dan Marino. Great stats, doesn't have a Super Bowl. Who knows if it's going to happen? But Dan Marino is an all-time great, and Justin Herbert has what it takes to be a Hall of Famer, even if he doesn't win a Super Bowl, just based on the numbers that he can put up. So there was a play in the Colts game, in the preseason game, where Anthony Richardson, I don't know if it was 2nd or 3rd down, but he threw a touchdown pass, but it was dropped. It went right through the hands. If you were watching the game, you saw the play I'm talking about. I think he was rolling out to his right. He threw, it was probably like a 35, 40-yard pass. It was right. I mean, the defender was all over the receiver, but the ball was placed perfectly and it was dropped. And because it was dropped, it's not a touchdown. If that ball that should have been caught is caught, then everybody's saying, Anthony Richardson, wow, did you see the performance he had? But that is your average fan. It didn't go by the head coach in the front office of the Indianapolis. They saw that throw. They saw that play and the poise. Anthony Richardson had his moment and it was dropped. But I'm not surprised that they named him a starter right after that performance. We have Steve in the chat. Always a pleasure to have Steve in here. What is going on, Shazbot, Kyle? That one's new. What is the one? Konnichiwa? I'm used to the Konnichiwa. I'm going to have to look up the Shazbot. But nonetheless, happy to have you in here. Jinja, who will probably be watching this maybe at his lunch break or his drive to work early in the morning. Anthony Richardson did look really good in the preseason in his first game. And I think even more surprisingly, we haven't heard that Bryce Young is it Bryce Young or CJ Stroud? Hold on. Um, Either Bryce Young or CJ Stroud haven't been named the starter. And I want to make sure I'm saying the right guy, because okay, so Bryce Young is taking first team snaps, blah blah blah. Bryce Young name starter. Okay, I think we got it right here. Okay, so it's Bryce Young that's named starter, and it's CJ Stroud that is not named starter. Mark from Orc, the late great Robin Williams. It's crazy. I was just talking about Robin Williams today. Life has been really weird lately. I had a friend that I grew up with, and we used to play football. Um, it was it was a really really fun time in my life. I think I was around 12 years old, and his name was Spartacus, and he's from Brooklyn. And I hadn't thought about Spartacus in God a decade or so. And I was taking a shower or something. One of these moments, probably driving in the car alone. I can't remember. And I thought, man, I wonder where Spartacus is. I wonder how he's doing. And the next day when I woke up, I had a message request on Facebook Messenger, and he was like, "Hey, it's Spartacus. Do you remember me? We used to hang out and play football." And I was like, "You know what, dude? Not only do I remember you, but I had a random like I think we thought about each other, at the same time, and I really think we don't understand the how connected we are as people sometimes. I think that's where the honeymoon stage comes from in a relationship because you're dating and you got butterflies and you're like you call them and you're like, "Have you been thinking about me like the entire day?" And they're like, "Yeah." And you're like, "Of course you have. I've been thinking about you the whole day." It makes sense, right? You're thinking about somebody, you're sending those brain waves or whatever, however we're connecting, and then they think about you and you're thinking about each other all the time. It's like I think the key to making sure your relationship is strong, maybe once you stop having, thoughts during the day. I'm not saying it has to be constant, but if you're going through a whole day and you never once thought, you know, my girlfriend or boyfriend, whatever it is, you haven't thought spontaneously, like, I wonder what they're doing. Are they happy? Where are they at? That I think is a time to evaluate, okay, do we need, to spend more time together, bond more? Anyway, this is not even a relationship podcast, but I just wanted to share that with you though, because I thought that was really cool that, an old friend reached out and I told him, I was like telling him what I was doing with the podcast. And he said, he's a huge Packers fan, which for some reason I didn't remember that. I thought I would have remembered that as a childhood thing because I always cheer for the Packers. And maybe he became a Packer fan after. I'm not sure. But I was like, dude, I would love to have you on the podcast. And so I might be interviewing Spartacus here on Only Football. And then you guys will all get to meet him. Um, so, okay. So it was CJ Stroud. And let me just say real quick, if I don't know if you guys heard on my last episode on Monday, CJ Stroud played against Bill Belichick in the Patriots, and it didn't go great. But what I thought was the main storyline that never became a storyline was that when what's the guy that started last year for the Texans? Oh, the NFL.com just started playing a commercial. The quarterback for the Texans, Davis Mills, when he came into the game, it looked like he belonged at the starting position. I mean, I don't want to jump to conclusions. I'm going to wait for a second game, but it looked way different once Mills came in. He was making passes, he was really letting it sling. I don't know if it's that, you're not going to be the starting quarterback type energy where it's like you got nothing to lose. You might as well just go out there, have fun and make, some throws. It's preseason. But he looked so comfortable and like he had that offense under command, and it was way different with CJ Stroud on the field. So I do think CJ Stroud has more to learn. But look, when you draft a quarterback number 2 overall, there's a lot of pressure to start him. So the fact that they haven't made a decision yet, mixed with what I saw in the first preseason game, tells me that Mills right now probably looks like he would offer more immediate success for the Texans, because if it were CJ Stroud that was playing better already, mixed with him being a number 2 overall pick, it would have been immediate. CJ Stroud named starter week 1. So the fact that it's not going that way, I do believe Mills is playing better in practice. He has a whole year under his belt. He has more reps. So at the end of the day, it's like, how important is it to please the fans, or, do we have to do this to justify our draft pick? It's like, no, you can draft somebody at number 2 and not play them for their first year. But are you actually going to follow through and do that? We're going to have to wait and see. Um, but I do think that there is a real dilemma in Houston right now. And this hasn't become a story, but I think it's more of a story than people. Everything the media has said so far about it is, yeah, it's only a matter of time. CJ Stroud will be named the starter. But that's not the point at all. It's not a prediction of who you think will start. It's the current state of the Texans. And that is, to me, just wildly interesting. So I'm excited for the week 2 game for Houston, who they'll be. Are they at home? No, they're at home against Miami. So that is going to be a game I'm going to be watching. That's Saturday at 1 p.m. Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence had a pretty bad interception in the first preseason game. He was like rolling to his left, and he made I think he just maybe in my head, what I thought immediately was he's been watching too much quarterback on Netflix. He's like watching Mahomes, and you could tell he was trying like to make a throw that's kind of outside of what Trevor Lawrence is. It was kind of like, what are you doing, dude? So, but I think, the preseason's the perfect time to try that throw. Can I run to my left and throw it, I guess it wasn't across his body, but throw it right-handed running left with a wide receiver on the run? Can I make that throw? And why not make it? It's preseason. If you don't, whatever, doesn't count. But I am excited to watch and see how involved Calvin Ridley is going to be in Doug Peterson's offense. Not just for fantasy football, but I do think Calvin Ridley taking a year off of football and coming back, I think we're going to see Calvin Ridley take a monster. I don't even want to call it a step forward, because if Calvin Ridley was always really good. It's just been a little bit since we've seen him, out of sight, out of mind. But I'm expecting Calvin Ridley to emerge as the number 1 receiver in Jacksonville. And it'll be weird. Is Zay Jones going to still be the number 1? Or that is something I'm monitoring. And another fantasy thing, Ramondre Stevenson, a 3-down back, somebody that I would have drafted in the top 10 personally. His fantasy volume or stock is definitely declining after the Ezekiel Elliott addition, because one of the areas Ramondre Stevenson actually struggled a little bit, and I wasn't aware of it. I always thought he didn't struggle in this area, but it was goal line running. And last year, that's the only time they threw Zeke into the game is when they needed that 1 or 2 yards on the goal line. So um, that was kind of disappointing for Ramondre Stevenson people. I had Ramondre Stevenson last year. If you're in a keeper league and you kept Ramondre Stevenson, that was definitely not great news. But as far as how this is going to affect Elliott, apparently Bill Belichick's offense that he runs is very um it's like right up the alley of what Zeke does best. So I am expecting Zeke to not necessarily bounce back, but I'm expecting the Zeke that we saw last year, right? He's going to come in, he's going to make plays. Um the real question is he playing on Thanksgiving? Last year, the Patriots played on Thanksgiving. Um, that's kind of something I'm sad about. I love just seeing him on Thanksgiving jump inside the Salvation Army bucket. I know it's such like a silly thing to miss. When is Thanksgiving? Week 12? Ooh, I nailed it. So this year we got Packers Lions at 9:30 a.m. if you're on the West Coast. Then we got Commanders Cowboys and then 49ers Seahawks. Honestly, the 49ers Seahawks game, I kind of like that. It's going to be Chris Collinsworth there with the Sunday Night Football crew on NBC. So yeah, no Salvation Army bucket. I got a question in here. I cannot pronounce that name. Said question, which football league is better and more quality, the Saudi league or the MLS league? Well, this is NFL football, not soccer, which I believe you're referring to. But yeah, I couldn't answer that question because this is NFL football, like football. But thanks for coming in here. Happy to have you in here. Um, feel free to stay. You know, we can chat about football if you watch football. Um, so in other news going on around the league right now, besides uh, the starting quarterback deal, I thought of an interesting question to ask. And it was on the Rich Eisen show, and it said, what storyline that has been big this offseason will mean nothing, um, in November of this year? So, like, November of this year, what storyline are we looking back on and we're like, "Oh my gosh, can you believe that we were even talking about that?" And I heard one person say, um, Stefon Diggs doesn't like his teammates, doesn't like Josh Allen. I could understand that one, but at the end of the day, Sean McDermott said that he was very concerned. So to me, when you hear something right out of the horse's mouth, there's no reason to, you know, if the media is manipulating people to think that it's not a big deal and the person that's closest to the organization says it is a big deal, it doesn't really matter to me that he's backtracking what he said. It's like once you said it, you said it. You know, it's like when you tell the truth on accident. Um, so because of that, I'm not really on board with that. Can you guys hear this? I'm going to turn up my sensitivity on my mic really quick. Listen to this. When I hear sirens out here, the coyotes go wild. Did you guys hear it? Pretty cool, right? Um, Sorry, that was an ADD moment. Um, so yeah, so that's definitely not mine. Um, Honestly, I think the storyline that has been blown out of proportion probably the most is going to be, um, hopefully that Russell Wilson was never washed. All off season, we've been like, is it going to work? Is it not going to work? If Russ can go out there and win 10 games this season, right? That's going to be the biggest probably narrative flip in my opinion. Because right now nobody believes that Russ is definitely not washed. Maybe some Bronco fans out there, but ask any Seahawk fan or neutral fan if they would want Russell Wilson on their team right now, they will say no, right? And I understand those people. And I honestly, if we could get out of his contract, I would want to probably do that. And to think he had 1 year left on his contract and they got the deal done before the season opening game last year. So they gave him that contract. He was on a contract, but they wanted to show Russell Wilson good faith and pay him. They wanted to show that they were dedicated and committed to Russell Wilson for the long term, but it was an unnecessary time to do the deal. Um, and I wonder if his deal would have been up at the end of last season, if the Broncos would have even signed him to a 4-year deal. I think with Sean Payton coming in, they would have wanted to see, but it would have probably been a 1-year prove it deal. So that pretty much summarizes what I'm trying to say. If he can go out there and win 10 games, then to me, that'll be the biggest blown out of proportion, not just off-season topic, but, maybe the last year and a half of, he's washed, he's this, he's that. We've started, getting into he's corny, like his personality, picking that apart. All you got to do is go out there and win, and all of that goes away. And he knows that better than anybody. We got Bill in the chat. What is going on? He said, you got Davis Webb to help Russ out. He will be an asset for you. And saying what's up to Steve. The Giants. I heard something really interesting when the Giants had who's the Giants backup quarterback? Um it wasn't Marcus Mariota. It was Tyrod Taylor. I don't know if it was this year or if it was last year. Was Tyrod Taylor the backup quarterback last year? 2022? Yeah, so it was Tyrod Taylor. So I think this was last year um, that we heard that Brian Dable was purposely calling plays that were easy for Tyrod Taylor, and he was calling very difficult plays for Daniel Jones so that Tyrod Taylor would appear more successful on the field. And he did that because he was testing Daniel Jones's mental toughness. I thought that was such an insane story to hear. And I kind of got a lot of respect for the head coach because I love hearing about whatever you want to call that, a technique. But it shows to me that the coach is very invested when it gets into the psychological games as a coach, right? I mean, if you're just not really fully invested, it's all about ability, right? But finding a way to get upstairs and challenge what's between the eyes, that shows me that that's kind of on the level of what I would think that like quarterback gurus, like that's what they would do, I would think. So I kind of like that story. It made me really appreciate him as a coach. Um, but yeah, what a wild story. Just trying to make Tyrod look better so that he could test the mental strength of Daniel Jones. Super, super cool. Traylon Burke is, unfortunately, we heard about this today. He suffered an LCL sprain and he will miss multiple weeks. So Traylon Burks is infamously the reason that they sent AJ Brown packing to the Eagles, and then they drafted Traylon Burks with the pick they had. Last season wasn't very good for anybody, but Traylon Burks was looking to make that big step this season. And although he was injured, he did avoid a massive disaster. He will be on the mend for a while, but an LCL sprain in a few weeks is a lot better than what the crisis could have been when he had to be carted off the field. Um, he was limping when he got up from the play. So he popped up pretty quick, but then he was limping and then he ended up being carted off. And that was, obviously anytime you see a position, wide receiver, running back, even quarterback, when you see him carted off the field in preseason, it's always associated with ACL, MCL, Achilles. Remember Teddy Bridgewater's non-contact crazy injury in the offseason with the Vikings the year after um, I think they missed the game-winning field goal against the Seahawks. It was like a 20-yarder. Um, and that game, I think, was like negative 15 degrees. It was insanely cold. But yeah, I mean, you don't want to see your stars get hurt in the preseason. So Traylon Burks avoiding any kind of season-ending injury, but definitely something to note. May miss week 1. It didn't say. It said multiple weeks. Obviously, in the week 2 of the preseason, that's kind of lining up right at week 1. So would not be surprised if the Titans are without their best receiving option for the season opener. Um, Raiders Max Crosby on training camp fight with Cam Akers. Um, so Cam Akers is a running back that I've been high on for quite some time out of Florida State. Um, and Max Crosby is somebody I don't like because he plays for the Raiders, not personally, just as a fan. And they got into a fight when Max Crosby attempted to punch the ball out of Akers' hands at the end of a play. Crosby has always kind of been doing questionable shit after the call or the whistle. I remember Mahomes, even in the quarterback Netflix TV series, being like, "Come on, dude." And he's like, "I was going after the ball." He's like, "No, you're not. No, you're not." Like, so Crosby just kind of like he reminds me of a bully, and don't get it twisted, like, at defensive end, you have to be a bully. This is a very tough and physical league, but we've also seen people like Von Miller, do very well at backing off quarterbacks once the ball's thrown or gently setting them down to avoid any kind of penalty. So I mean, there's definitely a way to play these positions without being, a dick. But I think Max Crosby just is one of those dudes. He's got that Indomitian Sue type mentality out there, just kind of dirty a little bit. Um, Akers is 5'10", Crosby's 6'5", so it's a pretty lopsided fight. But Akers was not happy about the ball getting punched out of his hand at the end of the play, thus sparking the skirmish in which punches were thrown. And I would love to see the video of it. Akers and Max Crosby throwing hands out there in the practice field. Both teams were clashing on the field before they got separated, just like any ordinary fight. The whole entire teams get involved. Sean McVay sent Akers to the showers while Crosby, having no locker room to be sent to, was um, visiting the Raiders bus to practice. Saturday, he sat out the rest of the team period of the practice on the sideline. So Crosby was asked about this in, I don't know if it was Saturday or Friday, but he said, "Shit, I was just doing what I do, and he didn't like that. So he got what he got. It is what it is." And for what Akers got, well, he seemed to disagree on how Crosby framed what he did or how he spoke about the altercation. He tweeted his own tweet with a picture of Max Crosby and an article from Gridiron, and that's exactly what it said was, "Shit, I was just doing what I do. He didn't like it, so he got what he got." So Cam Akers retweeted with a quote. Somebody asked him what it was I got. Anybody with eyes saw what happened. Dying, dead emoji, laughing emoji. So the Raiders and the Rams. I don't believe that the AFC West plays the NFC West because we played the NFC West last year. But just out of the rare chance that the Raiders, because you got your non-divisional games, so I'm wondering if the Raiders clash with the Rams at any point. Here we go. We got upcoming games, full schedule. We got the Broncos, the Bills, Steelers, Chargers, Packers, Patriots, Bears, Lions, Giants, Jets, Dolphins, Chiefs, Vikings, Chargers, Chiefs, Colts, Broncos. So we won't get to see Max Crosby and Cam Akers get into another fight, unfortunately. But hopefully, maybe we'll see that game next year. But man, that we hear about that all the time, and I think if it was Max Crosby having no bench to be sent to, then they were in LA. LA's hot. So is Vegas. I don't think it would have mattered. It's summertime. So you mix that with the chippiness. There's probably been more fights than we even know about year in and year out. Raiders activated first round edge rusher Tyree Wilson from non-football injury list. That's really good news for the Raiders. McDaniels said it's progressing the way we thought it would. So now it's time to take the next step here and get him on the field and in his pads, start working toward the ability to be in team drills and all that stuff. The 6'6", 275-pound pass rusher has been sidelined for the entire offseason after initially undergoing surgery to repair his foot last November. Wilson suffered the injury against Kansas, missing Texas Tech's final 3 games and most of the pre-draft process. He's 23 years old. He still went 7th overall, following a breakout senior season where he had 7 sacks, 14 I was going to say TFLs, but tackles for losses for those, and 1 forced fumble and 1 fumble recovery. It's not clear yet whether he will see any preseason action prior to week 1. The Raiders will continue their exhibition season Saturday against the Rams at SoFi. And then they're going to finish up with their final preseason game at Dallas on August 26th, which is 10 days from now. So we are getting really, really close, ladies and gentlemen, to the real deal. In more news, we got Antonio Gates. I actually posted this on my Facebook today. I put Antonio Gates is going to be enshrined into the Chargers Hall of Fame. I put one of the greatest to ever do it. Respect. maybe 100 emoji, I don't know, but I gave him his flowers, and then I said, "Too bad it's gonna be an L," because the game that they're enshrining him into the Hall of Fame, they're playing the Broncos, and then my family decided to comment on it and go, "Oh, yeah, an L for the Broncos, ha, ha, ha." But yeah, no doubt he's one of the greatest tight ends to ever play the game. Um, he definitely deserves everything that he's going to get. Definitely going to be into the NFL Hall of Fame if he's not already. I believe he. Oh, okay. So he's in his first year of eligibility for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and he will definitely be added to the Hall of Fame. Surprised. I mean, I guess maybe they reserve first ballot Hall of Famers, first year eligibility Hall of Famers to um, quarterbacks, but I would feel like Antonio Gates would be considered a first year eligibility Hall of Famer. Let me know if you guys agree with that or not. Aaron Rodgers calls for continuity on Jets' offensive line, and this is something I've been wanting to talk about. The Jets' offensive line last year was really bad. Um, I think they were 26th last time I looked at it. I'm gonna pull it up right now. Um, I feel like with all of the hype, I mean, Hard Knocks has a way of making you like whatever team they're following. I was into the Lions last year. The year before that, I liked the Cowboys. Not like, but there was like it makes you like it humanizes the people, right? So, um, with the hype going on and the helicopters over the practice field, I'm like, is this going to work with the Jets offensive line? Like, is he going to have time to throw? That's awesome that you got, Garrett Wilson and you brought in Lazard and Randall Cobb and you got all these options at wide receiver. And now you have Dalvin Cook with Elijah Moore. But are you going to be able to give Rodgers enough time to throw the ball? And that's something that I think is worth looking at because the Packers they generally have a top 15 offensive line, right? Because when you have a really, an Aaron Rodgers or a Tom Brady or a Peyton Manning, you're just not allowed to have a bad offensive line. You just look at the offensive lines that the best quarterbacks have had. Drew Brees. That's why when Sean Payton came to Denver, his first order of business was bringing in Ben Powers from the Ravens, bringing in McGlinchey from the 49ers, getting that offensive line secured, which did not look good in the first preseason game, unfortunately. But Aaron Rodgers just went to a team that already had an offensive line. The offensive line was not one of the good offensive lines. So normally you get the quarterback, then you get the offensive line. They already had their offensive line and they added Aaron Rodgers. And what is that going to look like? What is that going to look like for Aaron Rodgers? The number one offensive line was the Eagles last year, then the Ravens, then the Green Bay Packers. Number 3, and I remember this is why my light bulb went off like, holy shit, we got to talk about this. The Packers were the number 3 offensive line for 2 years in a row. Then the Chiefs, then we got now it's like, if you want more pay, screw you. Let's see if I can find it on PFF. Here we go. Okay. Number 4, number 6, Cowboys, Patriots, Bengals, Chiefs, Colts, Rams, Chargers, Jets at number 13. And they have, gosh, there's like cat hair or something flying around outside. George Fant, Connor McGovern, Laken Tomlinson. There's so much talent on this front 5, but it's tough to bump the unit up to the next tier with so many unproven players. I think this was an article that was written in the preseason before the season started. I really want to see hard data and stats. Here we go. Sporting News. Let's see when this article was written. This is 8/25/2002. This is before the season started as well. You know who probably has it? Next Gen Stats, or here's a second biggest culprit, December 22nd, 2022. Now, here we go. This is what I'm looking for. This was December 26th. This was the day after Christmas. The Jets were on a losing streak. They kept on losing and losing, and then Robert Saleh had to answer a question about the playoffs because remember, they started with like a 6-1 record or 4-1, 5-1. They were doing really good, and then they started losing, and they were stacking losses, and then eventually it was like week 15 or 16, and they lost Thursday night to the Jaguars. We were streaming that game live. They asked Robert Saleh, what do you feel about your chances of getting the playoffs? And he said, it's not about the playoffs right now. It's not. We're not even – it was like he channeled basically playoffs? Talking about playoffs? Like, I mean – they went through that losing streak last season. This was an article written by JetsXFactor.com. New York Jets offensive line is the second biggest culprit in losing streak. Guess what? The first is their quarterback. Duh. So, okay, they fixed that. But the second biggest culprit in their losing streak last season is not fixed. So that is something to note, right? That is something to be concerned about. And it's not really been talked about too much, right? It was easy to point out the quarterback position. Zach Wilson was definitely leaving a lot to be desired. And now this is what it says. However, the reality is that the weight of the Jets' world has been placed on the quarterback's shoulders due to a different failure, one that has killed far better signal callers in the past, the offensive line. It's easy to blame injuries, but at this point, the only starting offensive lineman for this team that was not starting week 1 is Nate Herbig. Only Duane Brown is an injury replacement before the season. The Jets' offensive line is relatively healthy and it's expensive. In fact, the Jets have 4 starters who average annual contract value is $9 million or more. It's staggering that this kind of line has gone from shaky to a bottom unit in the NFL. It's further befuddling that the line was less suspect with guys like 4th-round rookie Max Mitchell and former first-round bust Cedric Ogbuehi starting at right tackle. The much-awaited return of George Fant seemed like it would pay dividends after Fant's stellar performance against Minnesota, but it's all been downhill from there. And I've seen that with Garrett Bowles, our left tackle. He was really bad. We thought he was a bust. We picked up his 5th-year option. He had an amazing year. He was like the number 4 ranked left tackle in the league. In some areas, he was the best. And then it was a great story of somebody, pushing through adversity. We signed him on a big deal, and it turned out like he has not repeated what he did on that 5th-year option. Offensive linemen are very streaky. Sometimes they're good. Sometimes they're bad, right? Sometimes they're good enough to keep you thinking that they have it in them, and then they start falling back as soon as you believe. It's a roller coaster ride unless you have like those top guys, right? Like Zach Martin type people, right? Those guys, but it says, okay, let's just dig into what they had last season and look at the difference. Pass blocking last year, one of the most easily visible side of blocking. It's clear on TV that the Jets quarterback have been consistently under pressure and duress the last 4 games. The numbers don't even indicate how bad the blocking has been since there's so many unblocked rushers. In the last 2 weeks, Zach Wilson was pressured on 49.2% of his dropbacks. Yeah, we know it's Wilson who holds the ball too long, and that is important because Rodgers is not going to make that mistake, but it's still astronomically higher than his season average. In his first 10 games started, Wilson was only pressured on 37% of dropbacks. Still significantly above the league average of 32, but not at that 50% that they were the last 4 games. And to add an insult to the injury, the Jets faced two less than stellar pass rushing units. They had showdowns with Gangrene is the Jets. Detroit and Jacksonville had the 27th and 28th respectively in sack rate. So what they're trying to say is that 49% pass rush, it wasn't hurry up, whatever you call it, the quarterback being hurried to throw it under pressure. They weren't even playing defenses that are known for being great at rushing the quarterback. They were playing the 27th and 28th defense ranked in creating pressure. So this is something that I thought would be a huge story, and now we're finally seeing an article about it. And I'm surprised that it's taken this long, but look, Rodgers isn't even in the preseason games. But you can definitely still see that in practice, this is something, because in practice, right? Think about it. Aaron Rodgers comes onto your team as a defense, a young defensive line. You really think that they're going to even attempt to put a fingernail on Aaron Rodgers? Those guys are probably like giving him his space, respecting him. Like, yeah, they're trying to win the 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 offensive line battle. But as soon as they do, I'm sure they're letting up, right? I'm sure they're just naturally not true. Like if it was Zach Wilson there, I'm sure it would be much more aggressive, right? So I think that this is going to be one of those things that maybe come week one, we are going to be like, there it is. The offensive line is not good. And we're going to probably think, okay, the number one thing that the Jets need to do if they want to make a Super Bowl push is clean up their offensive line. So that's what they're asking Aaron Rodgers about. In his words, he chooses his words a little carefully these days. He said, "I thought we played a lot better up front today following the Jets' joint practice with the Buccaneers. It's a work in progress. The Jets entered, look at that. So now Rodgers is saying that because they're playing a different team, right? They're playing the Buccaneers. Their defensive line doesn't care like the Jets' defensive line about keeping Aaron Rodgers healthy. So I feel like Rodgers now with this joint practice probably just now starting to feel some things that are going on that maybe he wouldn't feel if they were in their own house playing practice with their own defense. So he said, you can have a Hall of Fame quarterback. You can have 10 million plus receivers. You can't have the reigning offensive rookie of the year, or you can have all the skill in the running back room, but none of it effing matters until the big boys up front change who the F we are, Saleh said. We as coaches, we as an organization can't want it more than you do. And Saleh's message is, you guys, we can have everything in line. The Hall of Fame quarterback, the weapons, the running back. We can add Dalvin Cook. We can do everything that we can. None of it matters if you guys don't block up front. If you don't give time for Rodgers to go through progressions, it's all for nothing. It's an enormous amount of pressure. And I think naturally when you have a Hall of Fame quarterback behind you, they block better. I've seen it. I've seen the Broncos block for Tim Tebow, and the very next year, I've seen them block for Peyton Manning, and I've seen the difference. It's like trying to beat up your big brother. You can't explain why you can't do it. Like there's something there that's released when you have a Hall of Fame quarterback behind you. I do think that's going to help out the Jets a little bit. But overall, this is something that needs to be, I think, talked about a little bit more when it comes to the Jets, because we have a loaded division, right? The Dolphins are supposed to be good. The Bills are going to be the Bills. The Jets had Dalvin Cook. They're looking at going to the Super Bowl, trying to make a push. The Patriots added Bill O'Brien, who had a lot of success in Houston. Bill O'Brien is going to be, because what you saw last year from the Patriots was the attention to detail. That was always Bill Belichick's number one thing. He always had that attention to detail. The fundamentals were always there. They didn't win by flash, right? They won by doing their job, as Bill would say. And you saw that kind of slip away last season. You saw the pitch from Ramondre Stevenson when they could have just went to overtime, and instead they stiff arm Mac Jones onto the ground and say, sit down, and won the game. You saw things that just didn't feel like they had the Patriot brand on. And now I think what we can chalk that out to is Bill was overtasked, right? The offense, the defense, it was too much to manage. So you bring in Bill O'Brien, and I do think that things are going to look a lot better this year. So I wouldn't even just throw the Patriots out like, oh, yeah, it's between those three. Like, Bill Belichick is a great coach. They have a good roster. They added Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, I'm just saying, like, at any point, if I had to bet who wins the division, no, it's not the Patriots. But my point is, the Patriots are going to be a tough opponent every week, no matter who they play. That's just the way it is. So that division is going to be really, really important when it comes to having a good O-line, because a lot of good defenses, right? The Bills defense, the Jets defense, the Miami's got Vic Fangio now. You're gonna have to have a good O-line to get out of that division. And mark my words, whoever wins that division, my bet is that out of the 4 teams in the division, whoever has the strongest offensive line will be the team that probably is number 1 in the division. Bill said not officially retired by a team. Oh, wait, let me go up a little bit. Here we go. Oh, you guys been going back and forth. Okay, so Bill said the Giants' new regime is 2 things. 1, a crucible. They will test you. 2, mediocrity. You have to earn your reps. Okay, I like that. Steve, didn't he lose like 30 pounds? Crosby is kind of like that, though. Agreed. And then Flacco. Is Flacco with the Jets? And then Bill answering Flacco equals a free agent. He's not officially retired. Man, speaking of Flacco, somebody posted on, it was like an NFL Facebook page, and they said, who was the worst quarterback that you've had to endure as a fan of your team? And I said Joe Flacco, because Joe Flacco came over and the expectations were like, John Elway was like, he's got a lot of football left in him because Lamar Jackson was balling out, so they couldn't have both of them. And it was like, oh my God, is Joe Flacco going to be the guy to fix our post Peyton Manning era quarterback problem carousel? And then he sucked so bad. He was terrible. I saw him. I saw him in person. I went to the Kansas City Chiefs game. We got destroyed. I waited out for autographs. I saw him come out with his daughter on his neck, giving her a piggyback ride. It was cool seeing him up and close, good looking dude. He looked sharp, and I was like, I still asked for an autograph. I'm not going to lie. But man, it was a terrible season, and it was terrible. And I put Joe Flacco, and all these people started yelling at me. They were like, he has a Super Bowl ring. Oh my God, you must not be a Ravens fan. Oh, you must hate the Ravens, all this stuff. And I'm like, did anybody even read the question? I'm a Broncos fan, and I had to endure Joe Flacco. It has nothing to do with the Ravens. And it became this whole thing. And I even told my side of the story, and I got like 100 more comments of people just correcting me. I'm like, all right, forget about it. I'm out of here. But Joe Flacco, he hasn't been great, but he did lead the Jets to what was like the most interesting comeback win last year against the Browns. I think that was week 2. They scored a touchdown. They kicked an onside. They got the onside. They scored another touchdown, ended up winning the game. It was insane. It was like, wow, that actually works once in a while. Go back and look at it. Jets, Browns, week 2 last year. Look at the highlights on YouTube. That is a really fun, probably a 5-minute video, really good game, actually. So, but Joe Flacco, he's done, but he'll probably just hang around. I mean, that's what I would do. I mean, if somebody goes down, let's say Miami, yeah, knock on wood, Tua, right? You saw last year they lost Tua, then they lost Teddy Bridgewater. They were running out of options. No, it was the 49ers that said that they would have called Philip Rivers. Well, I think that this is, Joe Flacco will be a quarterback that will be called if necessary at some point during the season. So I don't think he will officially retire. I think he's going to keep that door open. Who knows? Maybe he has hopes of joining a playoff team or a team that could go to the playoffs and winning one more Super Bowl. But um, back to the news. Let me see if there's some other stuff that I've missed. Jonathan Taylor, he leaves training camp again with an excused absence due to a personal matter. We've heard this written 20 different ways now at this point. But it's very simple. No matter how they write it, Jonathan Taylor wants to be paid. And I don't know if what has been said is irreconcilable differences between the owner. But Jonathan Taylor returned to Indy to continue his rehab. However, he had a personal matter arise, the team said in a statement obtained by NFL insider Mark Garfolo. The Colts did not provide any specifics on Taylor's second excused absence since camp begun. And I got to say, this is very interesting because I would think that if I had a player and I said, I'm not going to pay you, and he said, well, then I'm not going to camp. And I'm like, okay, if you don't go to camp, you're going to get fined $50,000 every day. I would think that I would want those fines to come in so he would come to camp. But it seems like maybe there was, and this is all speculation, but maybe Rick would call this conspiracies with Kyle segment. Maybe Jonathan Taylor told Jim Irsay something like, if I get a single fine from the organization, I'll never take a snap for this team again. Something like that. Because it's weird. It's like if you want him to come in, but you're covering for him while he doesn't want to be there, right? It's all very confusing. So I'm wondering, how exactly is this going to come to an end? Are they going to be excusing him week 1 for family stuff? Like, where does this road ultimately lead? I'm very interested in that because there's a spark in Indy. Anthony Richardson went out. He proved that, he could belong in the NFL. He made some clutch throws. He controlled the offense, and their best player isn't in camp, right? It's like, man, it's like you almost have it. You almost got it, right? But it just feels like Jonathan Taylor is that missing piece that they need to buy in. And you know what? You got Anthony Richardson at quarterback. Like, when you have a rookie quarterback, that's when you can afford to pay people. Give him $2 more million, whatever. You're not paying your quarterback millions of dollars. Anthony Richardson's making whatever he's making. He was probably, let's see, he's probably making like $4 or $5 million a year. I can look it up really quick. But my point is like, when you have a rookie quarterback, you're in a 4-year window where you can have a lot of talent on your team and you can afford it. So if your best player is going to not play and you're going with a rookie quarterback, you better give that dude a complimentary running game, man. Give him, and how do you do that? Well, you get the best damn running back in the league, potentially top 3, top 4. I mean, he was really good 2 years ago. Just because last year was a flop on the whole entire Colts. Doesn't mean Jonathan Taylor didn't do what he did when he ran for like 1,800 yards 2 years ago. So, yeah, get that guy back on your team if you're going to go with Anthony Richardson, who is going to need that running game. It just doesn't make sense. Give him $1 million, whatever you got to do to get him coming back. Give him that little tiny pay raise. So that is the Colts news about Jonathan Taylor, but it's not necessarily telling us anything. So I'm still waiting for some real news to come out about that. There, for all my Madden people, I did want to go over this. So Madden NFL 2024, the producer said the goal of series is to blur the lines between our game and the real life game. If you don't know what that means, all I knew that it meant was they're trying to make the game look even more realistic. They don't want it to look like, oh, that's a video game. That's the real thing. They want to try to make them mirror each other as closely as possible. When the sun's shining down on a warm, humid August afternoon in Canton, Ohio, two preteens waged virtual gridiron war. A nail-biter was unfolding on a flat-screen television set up outside EA Sports' new promotional vehicle. A reimagined Madden Cruiser customized with exterior gaming terminals, a full content creation suite, and exhibits highlighting the life of late legendary football coach John Madden, parked at the Pro Football Hall of Fame directly across. So they had like a Madden bus outside the stadium in Canton. Running back Joe Mixon sliced his way through Tampa Bay's defense in the game's final 2 minutes. The Buccaneers clung to a 7-6 league, surrendering field position with hopes of a turnover, so they're going over the game. That boy good, an onlooking EA Sports staffer exclaimed. I didn't even mean to run that play. The boy controlled the Bengals replied, beaming with delight as the sun rays gleamed off his Sauce Gardner Jets jersey. Very descriptive. The game that had so engrossed the two was Madden NFL 2023, widely regarded as the best playing Madden in years. It represented a big step forward for its maker, EA Sports, but the company also encountered a number of technical issues that plagued the first half of Madden NFL 2023's release cycle. Madden 2024 is set to launch this Friday. How it improves, whether it incorporates the lessons the company has learned, and whether the company can avoid similar issues that befell Madden 23 will be crucial to the trajectory of the franchise and to EA Sports' ability to fulfill its ultimate goal, creating the best sports game in the world. And they have dropped the ball because ESPN 2K5 with Terrell Owens on the cover catching a one-handed pass, that was a better football game than Madden. And it was so good that Madden had to buy it just to get them off, get them, out of the way, not they didn't want that competitor. So it's going to be really interesting to see. I mean, I remember that game, Chris Berman, they had a halftime show. It was realistic. It was based on what you did in the first 2 quarters of the game. It was really, really good. So, I mean, I've been waiting for Madden to do more things like that. If you challenge the play, I would like to see the coach. I think they did add that where you could throw the challenge flag, but I just remember the 2K series was always like you felt like you were really controlling an NFL team. Madden always felt more like a video game. So I'm excited to see it. I'm going to be picking up my copy. I haven't bought Madden in a couple years. In 2023, 2022, probably. Let's see, it's probably been like 6-7 years since I've bought a Madden on the day it was released. But I was thinking I'm going to do that, and I'm going to live stream my first game, playing my first game on it as kind of like a fun side thing for the game. And I was thinking I would do Broncos Giants for Bill, and we'll see if the computer can beat me. But yeah, it'll be cool. I know all the coaches you can see on the sideline in Madden, and they look really realistic. I mean, it's like it got to a point where I could like have the game on, and like graphics is not the problem. It's the play style. It's not the graphics. The graphics are phenomenal. People that don't watch football a lot, like my stepmom, like she would come and be like, "Oh, football, you're watching football?" And it's like, "No, I'm playing the video game." It's like, holy crap. Bill Belichick, I believe, is the only coach that refuses Madden to use his picture. So every time you play the Patriots, you just see this like bald, chubby dude that's like not Bill Belichick at all. He looks nothing like him. He's an avatar. He's a fake created head coach, and it's so funny because that's like not Bill Belichick. Steve said, I still have my Madden game from 1992. It's the championship edition. Yes, that's that was on Nintendo 64, I believe. And John Madden is on the picture of it, I think. With all the teams at that point. Borrowed it from a video store and never returned it, LOL. You couldn't buy that one in stores. Steve stealing out here. Watch out. I love that. That is awesome. Um, man, I would love to have. I think that's going to be my next thing on the backdrop. Is I'm going to get on eBay the oldest Nintendo 64 Madden that I can get, which I think it might be 19. When did they start doing it? 1990, maybe, because they just had their. I think they just had their 20-year. No, it would be 30-year. I'm going to look it up really quick. First Madden game. First Madden game was released in 1988, and it featured customizable weather control, time quarters, fatigue players, injuries, and penalties. The game became more popular when it moved from the Sega Genesis console in 1990 to the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in 1991. Is the so it went from Sega Genesis to Super Nintendo to Nintendo 64 to Xbox in 2001. No, the year 2000, I think, is when Xbox came out. He's not stealing it. It was purloined. Sounds nicer. Yeah. It's like I wasn't crying. I was sweating from my eyeballs. So the games we got Thursday night football. That's going to be tomorrow. It's at 4:30, Cleveland and Philly. I think, yeah, I'm gonna live stream that. And then Friday we got the Giants in Carolina. I'll probably mess around and live stream that one too. And then on Saturday at 5:30 p.m. we got the Broncos. I'm gonna just live stream a couple games this weekend, get back into the flow. The season's coming up. And I've been thinking as well, as along with going to football games, I'm not going to stop streaming them. So, like for instance, I'm going to the Chiefs Jags game week 2, but that game will end around 4 o'clock. So as soon as that game ends, I'm going to be getting, everything set up to stream the Broncos Commanders game at 4:30. So there will still be streams and stuff like that. It's not like one or the other. So that'll be a lot of fun. It'll keep me from having too many beers at the games, or maybe it won't. We'll see. But it's going to be a lot of fun. So that's what I got for today. We're going to be going live again tomorrow. And if you guys want to like this video, that would help us in the algorithm. I can tell as we get closer to the NFL season, the algorithm is already boosting. I made a short yesterday, and It had like 555 views in the first like 10 minutes or so, which is the most views that we've gotten in like 4 months. So it's just been hard, when you go outside of the NFL season. I do think YouTube like turns down the NFL algorithm depending on where we are. If it's because one time, when the Heat won Game 7 and went to the finals, I made a short on Eric Spoelstra, um, on what he said after the game, and it had like 1,700 views. And I'm like, okay. So I think depending on what season you're in, YouTube will boost it or turn it down. So I can tell that we're getting back into where NFL shorts can be boosted and we can continue growing. We've been getting new subscribers. We're up to 321 now, and we are still growing. So that's all I got for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. I know it was kind of a long one today, but just having a good time in here with you guys. So you guys are awesome. You can follow me at FTBLONLYPODCAST, and you can follow my friend Rick at and now Rick ANDNOWRICK. We're gonna have Rick here back soon, and I know for me, I'm really excited about that, and I know you guys are too. I miss having somebody to bounce off of, somebody to tell me I'm stupid, somebody to tell me my takes are terrible, somebody to tell me my breath stinks virtually. I just, I'm excited to get him back. So really excited for all of things to get normal, real season, regular season, real important, meaningful games with Rick. We're so close to it. I can smell it. The only thing is that with all the traveling, the backdrop is not going to be there. So I want you guys to know that I'm going to stay in this spot with this backdrop for as long as humanly possible. But I'm going to also be having to move around a little bit and do stuff like that. So if you see me just in random locations, we're gonna have to just, let it go and just go with the flow for a little bit. For the next 4 months, it's gonna be crazy. So Bill said if you post it on Twitter before you go live, I'll try and retweet it and see if we can get anyone else. And that's actually a really smart idea. I'm going to start doing that from now on. Thank you, Bill. And thank you, all of you, for listening and making this a podcast that you are interested in. It means a lot to me. Every time I talk to my family, I just went to a wedding. They ask me, how's the podcast going? And I always tell them about you guys and the core people that listen. And yeah, it's just, it means a lot that you guys listen. So thank you guys for tuning in, and I'm going to see you guys tomorrow. Until then, go Broncos. Jinja, Anthony Richardson's your new starting quarterback. Congratulations. I'll see you guys tomorrow. See ya.